And now for more on the stalled peace talks between the United States and Iran and what could come next. We're joined today by Andrew Millard, head of department at the Department of International Relations at Changwon National University. Professor Millard, thank you so much for coming on today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me again.
So the shooting at the White House Correspondents' dinner has been making headlines this week. And although President Donald Trump did say the incident won't deter him from winning the war with Iran, could it still affect negotiations with Iran?
This is unlikely to have a significant impact on the negotiations with Tehran, mainly for the reason this is not an isolated incident. So, of course, the shooting at the Correspondents' dinner is the most recent one, but there's been several different sort of attempts against Donald Trump. So the most famous one where he was shot in the ear. So this sort of signifies that this was not an incident that is specifically directed at the Iran war policy itself. This shows that we have a lot of unrest, a lot of people angry, not about the Iran war, but just about the Trump administration in general. So all of the various policies that President Trump, that the administration has introduced over the past year, these are now sort of compounding on each other. And the Iran war is sort of adding to that, but it's not been a direct cause of the shooting. And even the shooter, if you read his manifesto, it wasn't specifically looking at the Iran war either. Now, where Tehran could possibly take advantage of this situation is it shows that there is this growing pressure, there is this growing unrest in America against the Trump administration. So in the negotiations that are ongoing between Tehran and Washington, Tehran could use this as sort of delaying tactics. They know that there's a lot of domestic pressure in the US. So if basically they just delay the negotiations, make them as long as possible, draw them out, then this will work in Tehran's favor.
Right, and Iran has also reportedly offered to reopen the Strait of Hormuz if the U.S. lifts its blockade. But despite this new proposal, the talks remain stalled. In the United States, the U.S. Secretary of State says preventing Iran from developing a nuclear weapon remains the core issue. So will the two sides be able to reach a deal?
So what we have now is basically a stalemate. We have Iran has its position where it doesn't want to give up on what is left of its nuclear sort of ambitions, its fuel enrichment processes and things like that. But we have the US saying they must give up their nuclear ambitions. That is the first step. Once they give up those, then they can reopen the Straits of Hormuz. So we're at very opposite ends of the spectrum. Now, if you listen to statements coming out of Tehran, they're saying that actually, apart from the nuclear issue, generally, the negotiations, they are making progress, but it is this nuclear issue that is the sort of the key one. But of course, as we just mentioned, in the US, there's a lot of domestic pressure. So there is pressure in the US, but also in Tehran. Tehran economically, so whether Donald Trump's statement that he put out on Truth Social this morning was completely true, we're not sure about that. But what is true is that Iran is starting to suffer economically. They're also seeing increased domestic pressure. So I think once we can get over that last issue of the nuclear ambitions and the Straits of Hormuz, then I think a deal can be reached. However, right now, that remains the key stumbling block.
Right, and while that's happening, Iran appears to be moving closer to Russia. President Putin met with Iran's top diplomat this week and pledged deeper ties. So what's behind this move?
So, yes, Iran and Russia, they are becoming closer because of what is happening in Iran at the moment. However, again, this shouldn't be seen as something surprising. It shouldn't be seen as something unexpected and out of the blue. If we actually go back to January 2025, then this was when Iran and Russia signed the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty. So this was before this war was happening. This was also before the sort of the conflicts between Israel and Iran were happening. So the Iran-Russia relationship in itself, it's not a new one. Over the past several years, they have been coming closer together. So in fact, the comprehensive treaty that they signed in January, this was covering fairly different areas, from energy to defense, trade, security. So it was covering a wide area. But of course, because of the conflicts, so Ukraine and Russia conflict, and now the Iran-US conflict, here we're seeing lots more cooperation in terms of trade, in terms of energy cooperation, but more importantly, on intelligence sharing and weapons sharing, and so on.
I see. And Professor Millard, before I let you go, also in the United States, Britain's King Charles is on a 4-day visit amid differences between the two nations over the war with Iran. Why is his state visit so significant, and could it restore relations between the United Kingdom and the United States?
I mean, yes, this is quite a significant visit in that it's, to be honest, more symbolic, because really this is to celebrate the 250th anniversary of U.S. independence. But it does come at a very intense time where relations between the US and UK are really at an all-time low. And so King Charles, he's not going there on an official diplomatic visit, because remember, the UK royal family, they should remain apolitical. However, he is going there basically to show the long history of US-UK relations, and to remind the US that there have been different disagreements in the past, but we've always managed to overcome those disagreements, and we've always managed to maintain this very strong, very good relationship. So that's really the King's key message. So in his speech to Congress, he was quite humorous. He was using humor to sort of try to bring this tension down a bit. So that's really the big role that he can play. But we should remember, he is not a political official. He's more there as a symbolic representative of the UK-US relations. And we should also mention Donald Trump. He has a bit of a soft spot for the royal family. So I think this is a very good visit, a key timing.
I see. All right, Professor Millard, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.